Welcome to Zen Warrior Conversations. I am your host, Sam Morris, creator of Zen Warrior Training. And today I have as my guest a good friend of mine, Will Henshall. Will is the CEO of Focus at Will, which he will describe in just a moment. Better to have him describe it than me. He's also CEO of Metal International, which is a men's entrepreneurial group, which I have been a proud member of for the past 6 years, and which is an absolutely robust and growing group based out of LA, but now spread around the world, as the name international would suggest. He is also a multi-platinum hit songwriter and producer and the founder of London Beat. So if you remember that song, I've been thinking about you, that is Will's song. So that is one of my favorite earworms from the 80s. And
It was the
still,
night. Just to detail, it was actually the 90s, but
it was the 90s, was it?
yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
early 90s. But yeah.
Early 90s. Okay.
Oh,
Well, welcome,
anyway,
Will. It's great to have you here.
it's a pleasure. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love having conversations with you. They're always interesting. I'm not sure where this will go, and but I want to start by just kind of going back to London and what originally sort of created your interests in music, and where that came out of, and sort of the beginning of your career and what has eventually gotten you here today.
Well, I've no idea where the music thing came from in my family. I'm the only actual musician for generations. My father has some sort of artistic actors on his side of the family back a couple of generations ago, but genetically, just a random gene that kicked me in to be a musician, which is it is interesting. I always feel envious of other families where they're all musicians and they can harmonize together or play music together. It was just me.
I can relate to
And
that.
I was recently looking through a box of old photographs from the 60s, and there's photographs of me. I was probably 4, and I've got my dad's acoustic nylon strung guitar, and it's huge because I'm so little, and I'm like this, holding the guitar like this, and I can see I'm actually playing a G chord. I'm at
Oh,
the age of 4. I'm like, damn, you're playing an actual
wow.
chord.
Oh,
Imagine
wow.
if
How
it were
about
on a
that?
string.
How about that?
How about that? Um, so my dad did have instruments around, and he can kind of play by ear a bit. So he does have it, but he doesn't have, it's not his thing. And we had a piano at home, and I remember again sitting on a big pile of books, about the same age. I'd be about 4 years old, and then just looking at the keyboard, getting the pianos, and then listening to just playing the black notes. Just playing the black notes and realizing the black notes sounded really nice together if you just play the black notes. Just play the black notes. It's called a pentatonic scale, right? Just play the black notes on the piano. And then I'd be like, this sounds like Hawaiian music. I remember my little brain going, this sounds like here. I'm 4 or 5 just playing the black notes. And then, I don't know, I've always been interested in math. My dad was a math teacher, a science and math teacher in high schools. And I was just like, if you play the black notes on the piano and then you play the white notes next to them, just go up one and trying to remember what that looks like. It also sounds like a Hawaiian music. I was like, that is interesting. Of course, later on, and now I'm able to say, yeah, little William at the age of 4 had figured out a pentatonic scale, and if you just play it, the pattern is up a note. And then I was like, well, what happens if I then take that up another white note and keep the relationships between the notes? And then I was like, oh, playing the piano is kind of fun because it's about patterns.
Mm,
Patterns.
mm,
And then I remember getting a music book. My dad had some books, like, I don't know, whatever the popular music was at the time, the Beatles and a few other things, and I'd be sitting there trying to like figure out the things. And then my parents put me into music lessons, which was a bit of a disaster because I've got a great ear, but I'm not very good at music. So even today, if you put a piece of music in front of me, I'm going to be like this: 1 and 2 and 3, and I can't read music at all. I mean, I
I
know
can
how
I
to,
can
but
relate to that 100%.
right.
Yeah.
So winding swiftly on. I'm really glad I did have piano lessons, because it taught me a lot about, how to play scales, and then the notion of the way chords are all related. But I always thought about it in a pattern basis. I always thought of it in terms of, C major is really C major 6, which is an A added to the C major chord. This is a kind of a technical conversation, but anybody who's a musician listening to this will understand. A minor and C major are the same. And you can go A major, C minor, and then if F is very close.
Wait, you were figuring out relative minors at what age?
Yeah, 5, 6, 5.
5 or 6, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I was fascinated by it. And I was like, that is how that all works. So they put me in for piano lessons, and I found that I could learn. My teacher was called Mrs. Grajinski, and I remember her well, and she was very, very strict. She used to wrap my hands with a with a ruler if I didn't sit up straight like this. But I learned that I can't sight read at all, and I could learn the Mozart piano sonatas by listening to a record that I got my parents to get from the library, and I could kind of play along with the record and kind of see where the notes were. But really, I was learning by ear.
Amazing.
So I could play it really well until I got to the point where I hadn't learned any more. And then she'd turn the page, and I'd be like, oh.
Oops.
So, yeah. So I did do classical music, and then I learned loads of instruments. I learned the piano, of course, and then I learned the cello, and then the double bass, and then the trumpet, the trombone, and the saxophone. I was like, I want to play it all.
So you were a multi-instrumentalist by what age? When did you start learning some of these other instruments?
5, 6, 7
wow.
onwards. So I've never not been able to speak this language of music. And then I got very interested in recording technology as I got into my teens. I had a friend at school, this is kind of giving my age away, whose name was Randy Van Warmer, and he was a country singer, but he was at school. I went to school in the UK, and he was American. He was from Denver, and his mom moved to the UK, and I knew him at school. He was a couple of years older than me, and he was a songwriter, and he had some recording gear. He had something called a TIAC 4-track, which was a reel-to-reel TIAC tape machine. You could actually do 4-track recordings. And with him, I was very interested. He had a huge hit called Just When I Needed You Most. It went, you left me just when I needed you most. It was a huge hit back in the 70s, actually. And through Randy, I got very interested in learning about, you could track things and copy them. And then that sort of set me on a trend to recorded music and dance music and production and audio. And interestingly, classical music, I grew up in the 70s in the UK, and so the tradition at the time was you'd be a classical musician, and that was not. I just found classical music boring.
Yeah.
I had to do, for the equivalent of graduating high school in the UK, which is called an A-level music, I had to do opera. And I was like, what the hell is this? What on earth is more? And it was dreadful. And I remember that my music teacher, it turned out, was a closet racist, a complete closet racist. And he would always be muttering about, jazz isn't real music. And I'd be like, what? I'd loved Oscar Peterson and jazz music. And then Al Green and the Temptations, that's where I was coming from. And I met someone who said to me, listen, would you rather go to the opera or go and see Al Green or the Temps or Soul or Aretha Franklin, who was my all-time favorite singer of all time ever? I was like, I would never go to the opera. They go, well, why are you studying classical music? Because even if you get a job in an orchestra, they'll all be like that. And do you want to play? You don't even like opera. So I just went through this big kind of moment in my rebellion almost when I was in my sort of 16 or 17, wanting to play electric guitar. The Police, the band, were out. I could play guitar pretty well, and I was like, nah, enough of the classical. no, no,
Hmm.
no.
Hmm.
that's
Hmm. Hmm.
that's that's not where I'm going. And
Hmm.
ended up
Hmm.
ended up. I always knew that I was a songwriter. I was used to make little things, and then I moved to a place called Bristol in the UK when
Yeah.
I was in my late teens, early 20s. And I started my very first business, which was a recording studio. And I recorded a lot of reggae.
Okay.
A lot of Bristol has a very strong reggae.
Now, who were
Um,
some of the reggae acts at that time in
um,
London, in Bristol?
Talisman, Black Roots, the Cimarrons.
Okay.
Anybody listening to this knows about UK reggae from back in the day. Um, Aswad, do you remember them?
I
They
don't.
had
I don't.
"Don't Turn Around." Aswad went on to have some very big hits later on. Um,
Okay.
I got to know Drummy and Brinsley from Aswad well, so I've always been involved in. I grew up in an area of the UK that had a lot of Jamaican influence, and so I've
Got
always
it.
had strong connection with Jamaican culture, Jamaican food, and reggae. And I don't look like I'm into reggae, but I really am. And
You're a closet Rastafarian.
yeah, I engineered a lot of reggae,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I can understand Rasta talk, very, very
Now,
well.
did that early influence with your engineering with reggae music? Did that influence London Beat at all?
Yes, in a roundabout way, it did. London Beat was later, so sort of in terms of my arc, I
Mm.
started engineering and working on small regional bands in my early 20s, and then
Mm.
I started producing seriously when I was about 22 or 3.
Okay.
And I'd moved to London, which was in the 80s. This was in the 80s. This was in 84, 83, 84, 82 actually. And started working for Townhouse Records. I signed to the Townhouse, which is one of Richard Branson's studios, where Phil Collins did In the Air Tonight, and a lot of big Hugh Padgham worked, a lot of the big artists came out of. And so
Okay.
all of a sudden in the 80s, I started working on real projects for labels, and I became one of the new record producers out of the UK. And the most successful band at the time that I worked with was a band called King. And King never broke the States, but they were very successful in the UK. And that kind of launched my career as a producer engineer. Um, there's a desk called an SSL desk, which is, we were talking about earlier on. There's a device that's an interface you can get for your computer now that you plug a microphone into. But the original SSL desk were these huge mixing consoles. They're like 12 feet long, and at the time they were $1 million of 80s money. It was a lot of money. And I became an adept SSL engineer, which is managing and running the desks. So London Beat came out of me engineering and producing many other bands, doing a lot of dance music. I moved to New York for a couple of years, actually for 3.5, 4 years between 83 and 87. Did a lot of New York-based trash for cash dance music. And I was going out every night. I was in the Palladium, I was in the Limelight, I was very involved in the New York dance electronic scene because
Mm.
I had a really good handle on the mixing desk technology. I was a pretty good as an adept engineer.
So
I
this is kind of pre-rave culture, as
mm-hmm.
rave
Oh yeah,
culture
yeah.
was kind of emerging.
Oh, this is before that, a long time.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
used to get 12-inch mixers of 7-inch records. That's what these were. These were 12-inch records, and so we'd get I'd be hired by Island, by RCA, by EMI, the labels, to make a dance mix of the 7-inch record. And so
Mm.
you'd get the 7-inch master, and then it was only 3 minutes long, and then you'd have to extend it to 6 minutes. And I was one of the very first remix engineers who figured out, oh, I can use a Roland sync box to try and sync a drum machine up with these drums that are kind of out of tune. And you had to do all these tricks. You had to turn the tape upside down and make a click track with a gate and to trigger an early drum machine. There's something called an MC4. There's kind of a technical conversation, which was one of the very early Roland sequencers. So I was in at the really, really, really early days of electronic dance music, and people thought we were crazy.
Hmm.
I spent in 80s dollars. I bought a Prophet 5, which was like $5,000 at the time, a huge amount of money, and a Roland Jupiter 8 that was like $4,000. They had these two keyboards I used to haul around with me, and no one had them. So they were like, "This is how music's going to go." And they'd be like, "Yeah, but it's all synthesizers. It's what about the guitars?" I'd be like, And then a few years of that, I met Dave Stewart from Eurythmics, had a stint working with him, and then met the guys from London Beat. Oh, that was a roundabout way of me starting with the guitar, ending up in London Beat. And London Beat,
I love it. I've learned more about you through this. This is great.
London Beat was me and 3 American soul singers, African American. Actually, one of them was Trinidadian, but came from the States, and they lived in the UK. And so London Beat was a very interesting makeup of me being a kind of a techie, very British, eclectic, songwriter, engineer character, and then these 3 singers who came together as a unit. So it was really 2 of us. There was like me, I was the band and the main writer, but we wrote all the songs together. They used to do the thing they called the phrase that pays. And we'd always write together. And it was a super unity. And I was with these guys for 9 years. I learned a lot I grew up a lot. We became very successful. We had I've Been Thinking About You, which was #1 all over the world. It's still played on every state, played a lot all over the world still.
It's a class. It's an ageless song. That I mean, there's those sort of rare songs out there that are. There's a lot of songs that are generational, and then there are some songs that are just ageless. And I've been thinking about you as just one of those ageless songs. I can listen to it anytime, and it feels as fresh as the day as it came out.
Yeah. I wish I could duplicate it.
Yeah.
It was our second album. There was the first album that wasn't that successful. We had some hits, not here in the States, but in UK, Europe, and a few other territories. And then that was the first single off the second London Beat album, and it just all fell into place. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So I get that there is a bridge between the London Beat era and the modern day focus at will, serial entrepreneur, creator of I can't remember the name of the software that you sold to Avid, but you can remind us.
Rocket Network, yeah.
Rocket Network. There have been a whole lot of things that have happened. There's your life has been full of tons of different creative projects and businesses. Let's look at Focus at Will, because that's one of I mean, you're CEO of 2 gigantic companies right at the moment, but this is two full-time CEO jobs. But this is where you started Focus at Will in 2012. So describe to our listeners what Focus at Will is and how it benefits people.
Yeah, I'd like to correct you and say 2 gigantic businesses, two full-time businesses.
2 full-time businesses.
2 full-time
yes.
businesses. They're not gigantic, but they are both functional and profitable businesses. Focus at Will is a music service that I started. I launched in 2012. We actually started it in 2010, and it's a music service that delivers instrumental music that helps people when they're working. So it's very specific. It's for a very specific task. So this is when you are trying to work, you're stressed, you're under pressure, all of a sudden you're remote working, you're distracted, you're at home, there's the dog, there's all the stuff around you. How do you actually get stuff done? And we have built this verifiable, science-based, research-backed tool that delivers music specifically designed for your brain type to help you work better. And it works for about 2/3 of the people who try it, and 1/3 of the people who try it become like obsessed with it. And
Mm.
it's to do with the way your non-conscious mind is impacted by music, and everybody's different. So if you, like, for instance, if you just go on Spotify and you look at focus music, you'll find all of these playlists. Some of them work for some people some of the time, but there's no one size fits all. And the reason why is, there's a couple of things. The reason why Spotify playlists don't work, they're not a competition for us actually, is the selection of music is pretty random. And if you play music with vocals in, or anything that sounds like a vocal, while you're trying to work, for most people it's incredibly distracting. So it has to be instrumental music, but not only instrumental music, it has to be instrumental music that is actually designed as a stream for your brain type. And what I mean by that is, you know how some people are more easily distracted than others,
Sure.
right?
I will count myself amongst them.
Yeah, well, I know you pretty well, Sam, and I think you're a pretty focused guy. You've been able to really be still and to be able to get stuff done.
When I have a project, when
Right,
I have a
right,
when there's a structure, like right now,
right.
catch me between things and I'm a mess.
That's true of everybody, I think. But you can measure the basis of how focus at will works is the, in fact, if you're listening to this and you want to check this out on the website, which is focusatwill.com, there's a free um, onboarding quiz that will predict what kind of music will work best for you.
I was going to ask you about that. I
Yeah,
was really curious how someone would
that's how.
know how to customize.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there's a
And it's to do with psychology.
mhm.
There are there's you could put people into buckets, determining, if you sort of imagine there's a sort of a scale, and at the one hand you've got people who are very 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 ADD. So let's talk about a couple of people who are very easily distracted, but also incredibly prolific and talented. Elon Musk,
Mm.
Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, any politician, um, first responders, pretty much. These are people who are very easily distracted, but when there's a crisis and there's a lot of things going on, are able to really focus and be still when there's a
Mhm.
project, when there's something to be done.
Mhm.
On the other side, there are people who don't get distracted at all, who can just sit and work. The Dalai Lama could probably sit and meditate in the middle of the median on a freeway. He's you know, so there's a sort of a there's a scale
If the
of,
Dalai Lama is listening, Will's not necessarily suggesting that you sit and
no,
meditate on a median of a freeway, but
no, but he could do.
you probably could do. Yeah,
He
yeah.
probably could. It'd be unwise, but you could. He wouldn't be distracted while he did it. So it's clear that there is a sort of continuum of scale between people who are very easily distracted but very capable of working
Mhm.
when they're doing something, and then people who are able to work without any uh, in any circumstance. And most of the workforce, most of the people who are um, most effective people, in fact, you mentioned the men's group, Metal International, that we're both members of. It's made up of entrepreneurs who are leaders and who are highly capable and talented. And most of us in that group sit over here in the Elon Musk direction. We are highly capable, highly productive, easily distracted. Oh, what was that? A squirrel. Let's go. Hang on a second. Let's get back to work. Focus at Will is designed to help the 20% of the population who are over there. And it works extremely, extremely well if it works for you. That's kind of a.
Yes, yes. Now,
If it works for you.
now, you there's one channel I noticed on Focus at Will, which is specifically for people with ADHD, where
Yes.
it's like it sounded like a, I want to say it sounded like listening to a bunch of semi trucks run into garbage cans and like, I mean, if I remember correctly, it sounded
Yes.
almost like noise, but apparently that actually helps some people focus, a certain brain type focus. Can you tell us about that? Like how what might sound like noise to some people can actually help a certain demographic to be able to focus better.
Yeah. It's very counterintuitive, and because we're on video here, I'll just run the app on my phone, and
Okay,
I'll
great.
hold this up to the
Okay,
I'll hold this up to the phone. So there is a
okay.
channel on the system which is called ADHD Type 1, and it's sounds like this. Of course, this is going to be a little. You get it? This is just warming up. It gets more intense than this. Oh, this is even low energy. Let me take a notch. This is high energy.
Okay.
Fantastic. To people who don't actually have ADD, you get used to people saying, "Oh, I have ADD, ADHD, or ADD." To people who don't have ADHD, that is a racket. You're like,
Right.
what on earth is that? However,
Right.
if you actually do have ADD, if you are in the Elon Musk style class of being very distracted and very capable and very productive, this music calms you down.
Mm,
And there is a link to do with the way that stimulants are proven to help people concentrate. You've probably come across or know that um, psychiatrists sometimes prescribe stimulants for people with ADHD.
oh yeah. I mean, I've tried friends Adderall
Yeah,
before, and it was like the best thing in the world. I wanted to go around and organize my entire house, and then as
right,
soon as I was done with that, I wanted to do it again and again and again. I mean, I could
right.
not. It was the number of projects that I wanted to take on just seemed
Right.
like the more the better. Like, give me
Oh, yeah.
projects, give me things to do. This is so much fun.
So, what it's doing is it's overclocking your brain.
Hmm.
It's worthwhile me just spending a minute on just explaining how this works.
Hmm.
There's a guy called Dr. Ned Hallowell, who
Hmm.
is one of the leading ADHD, ADD clinicians in the nation, and
Hmm.
he's on my science board. So what I'm about to talk about now is not me. I'm just parroting what he's told us, and this is
Okay.
his wisdom.
Okay.
So what happens is we all have this is a super simplified version of it, but as soon as it was explained to me like this, it all made total sense. We have a clock in our brain that is going click, talk to Sam, click, talk to Sam, click, talk to Sam. It's like, if you're on a row team, on the rowing team, and someone's going pull, pull, right? And if that person isn't going pull, all of the oars get out of order and it just stops. And then she goes pull, and then okay, we're back again, right? So the speed of that clock in people who don't have significant attention deficit problems is slow. So if I have real ADHD and I'm trying to talk to you, my clock goes, talk to Sam. And now my attention wanders and I'm like, whoa, what's that? What? Oh, yeah. And then my clock goes, talk to Sam. And then my attention wanders and I'm like, oh, yeah, what's this thing here? And like, oh, yeah, talk to Sam. Now, if you speed the clock up, which you can do in a couple of ways, the main way that people speed the clock up is by adding stimulants. You can drink coffee that speeds your clock up. Now my clock's going, talk to Sam, talk to Sam, talk to Sam, talk to Sam. If my clock is really being sped up by, Adderall or something like that, I am now talking to you, Sam. What else you got? Because my clock's going, talk to Sam, talk to Sam, talk to Sam, talk to Sam. And so we have found that if you play music with high intensity at very specific speeds, it has the similar effect on the brain and allows you to focus because the music is helping sympathetically resonate with that clock speed in your brain. And that is why we think that the folks that will ADHD channel works so well.
So the ADHD channel is just going boom, 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 boom. Stay here, stay here. Keep focusing on will.
Right. So
well, it's interesting.
What happens is, in summary, what happens is that we have found that certain energy, certain speeds, certain kinds of music, and what sounds to someone who doesn't who doesn't have ADD, what sounds incredibly abrasive, helps keep you on point, helps keep you tuned up. And when we first built this channel, I thought so I met Ned Hallowell. He's a science advisor in the business, and I was like, well, I don't have ADHD because I can get stuff done. And with his help, we designed, him and another scientist called Dr. Evian Gordon from a company in San Francisco. We developed this music based on their feedback on how the brain works. And I was in New York doing an investor presentation for the early days of Focus at Will. And I had an hour to get something done, and my computer had crashed or something. So I went to a coffee shop in New York, and I was like, I might as well try this new channel. I got 1 hour to get this thing fixed. We actually raised a lot of money in that meeting. But I remember I had an hour to get this done. It was really 2 or 3 hours of music, and I put this ADHD music on, and it just knocked me onto the path. And I was like, oh, there's something here. That's interesting. The hour just flew by. I was in a trance. I did the best work I've ever done. I was absolutely on a mission. And I remember at the end of an hour, I'm like, my shoulders are like this. And I was like, I feel like I've just been, what on earth was that? And we found that that's exactly what's happened. 5% of the Focus at Will users listen to that channel 8 hours a day.
Wow.
It
How about
works.
that? How about that? It's so interesting because I find a lot of, with my coaching work, I find that a lot of what I'm training people in doing is initiating, focusing from their values over and over and over again. Where are your values now? Where's your values now? And so connecting your energy with your values, connecting your energy with your values. And so essentially what I realize I'm actually doing is I'm training people to be more focused in a similar way as the music is, through initiating one's energy and through grabbing that attention, which is really challenging to do a lot of the time. We have there's such a, even for someone who doesn't have ADHD, the tendency to go into rumination and be in the default mode network of the mind and just kind of go into sort of a bit of a brain fog or whatever, or be thinking about past and future events versus focusing on what's happening right in front of you. It's so incredibly invasive. It's so distracting.
Yes.
And so that's kind of, you're approaching it through music. I'm approaching it through training people to harness their attention. Yes. But it's really about the same thing. I didn't realize that there was like that clock that you just described makes so much sense. What did you call it again?
It's an internal clock.
Internal clock. Yeah.
The brain has a number of internal clocks, and this clock, I've been told, runs about 4 times a second, about every 250 milliseconds. But once you know your attention style, you can manage it. And there are real advantages to people who have what is called ADHD. And here's why. I touched on this earlier on. Some professions, it is really useful to be calm in a crisis when there's a lot of input, when there's a lot of stimulus. So all ADHD means is that when there is a lot of stimulus, it somehow calms the chatter in your mind and you're really calm. Gamers, video gamers who have like all of these stimulants, all of these things happening, are very calm when they're playing. Have you ever noticed that?
Yes, yes.
Some of
they go into a real flow state.
Yeah. some of the world class. If you're watching what these professional gamers are doing on the screen, you're like, but then you look at them, they're just like they're just like this,
Hmm.
completely in this flow state.
Hmm.
And so some jobs that being calm in a crisis are really useful. Battlefield surgeon, as I said, any first responder work, um, air traffic controllers. You've got
Mm.
a lot of things happening all the time.
Mm.
ER work, right? Any
Mm.
kind of particularly ER work.
Hmm.
A dear friend of
It's
mine in New York is hilarious and funny and completely hyper all the time. And he was an ER physician for years. He
mm.
used to be calm at work.
Mm.
Like, another 2 gunshots, Columbus and so. Okay, I got it. He's just like, he was always
Yeah.
just able to be calm.
It's so fascinating how it's been sort of it's now diagnosed as a like a problem or
Yes.
a mental disease when it's
Yes.
actually something that's we need. We
Mm-hmm.
require people to have we as a culture we need people to be able to function like that, or
Right.
we don't want an air traffic controller who can't focus on more than one thing at a time, who
Exactly.
it would be a bad situation to be in.
But to think about, say, tribal life thousands of years ago, you need one person in the tribe who, when the arrows are coming over the wall, is able to go, hey, I got this.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I got this. And is really calm. And then the other people are going, oh my God, there's arrows coming up. And someone's going, it'd probably be you, Sam. Your predecessors, your ancestors are like going, I got this. Calm down, I got this. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Being the eye of the hurricane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. So, so, um, and you were still now. You have musicians write specifically for Focus at Will. Is
Yes.
that how it works? Yes.
Yeah, we have about 40%, maybe 50% of the material in the system is unique to us, and the
Mm.
rest is remixed, remastered, and re-edited specifically for the purpose.
Hmm.
And I'm personally one of the artists on the system, so yeah, not
Hmm.
always under my own name. So, but
Sure.
we do.
That would be a lot of content for you to be creating all by yourself. How many artists do you have composing, producing
Do you know?
music?
I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm.
A few hundred maybe in total.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Some people haven't got that many material. We've got a completely new uh, feature and function set coming out sometime in June, which is artist channels. It's really exciting. And we're launching that with a couple of extremely well-known platinum-selling artists who are doing new channels on Focus at Will specifically for Focus. So these are new versions, additional versions of songs and material that they've known, that
Mm-hmm.
you've heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about any song that you like, even if you play the instrumental version of it, you'll have a familiarity about it. So we have to make sure that it feels familiar enough, but not so familiar that it's distracting.
I see. Yes. Yeah, that would make sense.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if it's so familiar that it's distracting, it's just bringing up all of your unconscious memories of
Exactly.
that song, which are then affecting your ability to
Your
focus on the present
non-conscious mind
moment.
is going to start, those thoughts start coming up while you're trying to work on a spreadsheet.
How fascinating. Yeah, that memory of that girlfriend that you were with back in the seventh grade or whatever. And now that's first and foremost on your
Yep.
brain instead of that email that you're trying to respond
Oh, yeah.
to. Yeah, yeah. Um, so what's the future direction? What sort of things are you working on implementing into Focus at Will presently, and what's the sort of the 1 or 2 year trajectory moving forward? How would
Well,
you like to see it expand and evolve?
I'm really interested in it becoming more of a platform for artists to be able to create music for purpose, because I've got a wall of gold records over here, platinum records from my days in the band, and it's all music for entertainment, really.
Hmm.
It's just for entertainment. I mean, sure,
Hmm.
Thinking About You's blessedly for me is one of the classic records from the last 30 years, but
Hmm. Hmm.
it's generally just for entertainment. It's just to make you
Hmm.
feel good or to
Hmm.
remind you of something. It's not really useful outside of that. I mean, that has value. Of course it does. And what I got really interested in Focus at Will was using music as a tool, using it for specific purpose, using it to help us achieve things. And if you think about the function of music in our society, music is used in worship, of course. You know, that's not for entertainment. Music's used in all religions. Music is used for funerals and weddings across all religions. So music has a role to help us feel a certain way. Music is all about the feels. Musicians and songwriters and artists and composers, we're all about the feels. We're all about creating something that makes you feel a certain way. And as far as the brain goes, you've probably heard about people talking about the reptile brain, right? Which is the back of the brain, which is the part of the brain, the limbic system, where you feel things. And there are three sort of layers in the brain. There's the limbic, where you feel things, and then there's the logical section, the middle bit. I'm just deliberately simplifying this. And then you've got the consciousness, which is what you feel about the thing that you just understood that you had the feeling about. And the beautiful thing about music is when a human hears music, it goes immediately to the limbic and you immediately feel it. You don't think it, you just feel it. That's why music is a thing. That's why you look round at a classical concert and everybody's in rapture, because the music is going straight to the feeling piece. Now, in the context of Focus at Will, the music is managing. What we do is we manage the way you feel about the music. And the goal of the music stream in Focus at Will, which, as I said, is customized based on each individual user, the goal is to manage the brain's subconscious reaction to external stimuli. So what it's doing is it's just like saying to the kids in the back, you know, when you're driving as an adult with kids, the kids are in the back and you can give them a, you know, back in the day, a Game Boy to keep them quiet. It's keeping the kids in the back seat quiet while you are trying to do your thing. Mm-hmm. The metaphor there is that we humans, our consciousness is, we're the drivers, and then the kids in the back seat are all these extraneous thoughts that we have. And so what Focus at Will does is it manages the relationship between your conscious mind and your non-conscious mind. It's sort of a conceptually how and why it works. So I'm really interested in helping artists develop a body of work that provides that function. This is music that'll help you do stuff. Music to help you paint. Music to help you create. Music to help you work, earn money. You know, this isn't music for entertainment. This is a different thing.
Yeah. Now, from what I know of your life, I'm looking at you through the lens of sort of a constellation. There's been things that we've talked about, and there have been things that we have not talked about yet. But as I'm listening to you, speaking of focus, I'm getting the reminder of Will as heart attack survivor. I'm getting the reminder of Will as graduate of Singularity University and someone who is involved with Singularity University. I'm getting the piece of the constellation of Will as CEO of Metal International. I'm getting the piece of the constellation that is Will, CEO of Focus at Will. And I know that there is a what I would call a spiritual dimension to where all of these interests, while seemingly disparate, actually have something to do with one another. They are pieces of a whole that describe your interests, your passion, your philosophy. I'm trying to find a question here, but I am just seeing the constellation. And I wonder if you can describe, kind of from a philosophical standpoint or from a spiritual standpoint, how some of these seemingly disparate interests are actually related to each other, and including your experience, what, a year and a half ago with actually dying from a heart attack and coming back,
I did. It was coming up to two
and
years ago.
sort of, and how all of this is part of the constellation, the Will Henshall constellation.
Well, when I look back on, you're right. I've had several different careers, and I'm a polymath, so I'm really interested in different things. I'm a computer developer and a logical. I've got 5 patents. My name's on 5 patents, which are to do with software processors, to do with audio production tools. And I've written a few hit records, so that's the sort of the art and the science. But the common thread between everything is to do with connection between humans. And for instance, after I was in a band, I created a business. I founded a business called Rocket Network that connected recording studios so that you could have an orchestra in one studio and a guitar player in another studio and a voice in another studio. And I sold the company to Avid in 2003. They make Pro Tools, for instance, the very well-known audio recording tool. And the core, the technology that we sold to Avid became the foundation of the Avid Cloud collaboration system that's available today. So that was all about technology that connects people, particularly artists. So I've always been interested in that. And then in recent years, my interest has been in helping people do stuff more effectively and more efficiently. Because we humans are our own worst enemies a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And being easily distracted and ever more easily distracted is just wasting time. My goal with folks at Will in particular and other related things I'm involved in is to help you do the work when you're doing the work and then stop doing the work so that you can then go hang out with your dog, with your kids, with your family, or just on your own. Because especially now when you're working at home under these, we're recording this during the pandemic here that's been going on for a while, it's very difficult to have some structure. You just keep working. And so my goal is work as effectively as you can, be productive and be happy while you work, and then step away from the computer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Step away, turn it off, and go
Mm-hmm.
do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And the balance of life.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that has happened to me now as I've now started to, I just hit my 60s, is mentoring and sharing some of the wisdom and learning to be a better listener.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very important part of my life is doing to a lesser extent what you do professionally, which is being a guide and a coach, mm-hmm. and being just being of service to particularly younger entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot of lessons the hard way.
Yeah.
We all do.
You've got a lot of wisdom to share.
Yes, but often that wisdom manifests by listening and just asking one question.
Sure.
Right? Yeah, I'm sure you find this. Sometimes it's listening, asking to hear more about what's happening for someone, and then you just go, if someone's asking about a business model or making a new product, there's a bigger question, which is making this product or service going to make you happy? Because you're going to put 10 years of your life into this, and do you really want to be making a widget that'll help people iron clothes better or whatever it is that you're doing, right? Is that your thing? And it might be. That's good. It's just
Sometimes people have a passion for flat clothes.
Right. Or whatever it is, some technical widget, you know. I always get upset when I hear business pitches that are about, here's a plugin that works in, the latest version of computer death kill game, and it just allows you to kill more people in the video game. I'm like, okay. Will that take people off the streets and scratch that itch so they won't actually do that in person? Okay, well, maybe that has value, but
Right.
it's
Well, there's a
very,
visionary quality to everything that you're doing. I mean, Metal
yeah,
International is really ultimately it's not just a collection of entrepreneurs. There's a focus on the future. There is a focus
yeah,
on where are we going as a society? Where are
yeah,
we going as entrepreneurs? How can we lead effectively and lead from the heart and do good in the world while doing business? And then I think about focus at will, and that is about leading effectively, focusing your mind so that you can lead effectively on your day-to-day life. And singularity is about the future.
mhm,
So you're a futurist
yeah,
who happens to have a number of different gifts and skill areas that you're bringing to the table, uh, and to help to plant the seeds with your own vision and helping people to cultivate their own
yeah,
vision of what the future might look like.
yeah. I'm a
I think that's
futurist.
one of the things that I find so fascinating about you is you're always future oriented. You're a present
Yes.
moment thinker, and you're always future oriented. You're
Yeah.
always in a place of you are a visionary.
Yeah, it's funny. Someone said to me the other day, it's obvious to you, to me, and it's amazing to someone else. And I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of true. I've always realized that I like thinking about the future, not because I'm not living in the present, because I like to be
Yes,
working in the present on things that will affect us in the future.
yes, yes,
Whereas some people like to just live in the future and they don't care about what's happening now.
yes. Now, speaking of the future and speaking of Metal International, what are some of your goals for Metal? Where would you like to see it go in the future?
So, Metal International is a men's group. It's based in Los Angeles, but it's an international group. I've been in this organization for, I think, 11 years this year. And one of the questions is always, why is this a men's group? Is this like some frat thing where you guys drink beer and sit around and watch sports and talk about chicks? I'm like, nope, that's literally the opposite of what this is. And I'm involved in it, and I took over the CEO and became a partner in the business last year because it's clear that men, all kinds of men, no matter what background, no matter what your demographic is, who are particularly leaders in their worlds, are better men when they're in regular content or in regular contact with other heart-centered conscious men. We
Amen to that.
automatically we automatically tune each other up.
Yes.
Every time I'm in a meeting with you, Sam, and a dozen other guys who are our peers, it forces me instinctively and completely automatically to step my game up
Mm.
so that I too am thinking in a much more conscious way.
Right.
And Metal as a group, it stands for Media, Entertainment, Technology, Artists, and Leadership. And that's where it came from. But in fact, the men that are part of this we have a lot of doctors, people who work in medical research. We have people who work in space. We have scientists of all kinds. We have many different types of artists, fine artists, musicians, actors. We have a lot of people who work in the film business, industry, inventors. When you are in regular contact with other effective and successful men, what happens is you make better husbands, boyfriends. you become better fathers, and you become better husbands. As I said, you become better as a boss at work. You just become better generally, and that's for me why the metal organization is important.
Well,
If
I
any
can,
men, well, if any men
as
are
a
listening to this and you want to get involved, just go to the website, which is metal.international. It'll tell you about it.
yeah, and as a member for the past 6 years, I can completely attest to that. It has stepped up my game dramatically
Right.
in a way that I would call positive pressure.
Yeah.
And it has stepped up my game to show up as a more consummate professional,
Mm-hmm.
and as a more and more accountable in all parts of my life.
Yes.
Just it has matured me as a man, and I can, yeah, absolutely, it's been invaluable.
Yeah, and it works. It was an in-person Saturday morning at a theater event for many years in LA, and then recently with the pandemic, we moved it to an online Zoom event, and it's actually much more effective because now instead of being 200 guys in a theater here on a Saturday morning, it's now many, many hundreds of men from all over the world. We have, guys in Singapore, Australia, Europe, the UK, many, many countries. And now we're extending the membership and the connection and the brotherhood to all these different places. And being a metal man has some, we've all got a few things in common, which is really interesting. We say the tagline is where men connect, support, and grow. And that's what we do. We connect, we support each other, and we grow. And we're this diverse group, as I said, entrepreneurs and business leaders. And there are a number of meetings, events that happen through the week. There's a big one on the Saturday morning, and then we do other events. I run an event called The Foundry, which is a personal growth-driven process that helps you create brotherhood, and confidentiality is a big piece of that. And you can meet the mentors. It's a super interesting group. So
Couldn't agree more. And I couldn't agree more that the evolution to online has been nothing but a positive. I mean, I love in-person connection, and there's obviously something so valuable about being able to give my brothers a hug and connect in that in-person way.
mm-hmm.
I also found that some of the unstructured time at Metal, where people are socializing and talking and that kind of thing, there was oftentimes it felt chaotic to me a lot of the time. Like you're constantly being interrupted in conversation by people who are coming in and out, and you want to be having a conversation, but then you might feel bad that you're not including this person over here who just walked in, who you really want to talk to, and that kind of thing. And then you're having some important conversation here, but then someone else has something to say here, and then you have to focus there. And then you have certain sort of, naturally people sort of create their own little preferred pod of people that they prefer to talk to each time. And so then you have these little cliques that begin to form and that type of thing. And one of the things about the online format is it is completely distinguished all of that. Now there are these random breakout groups where everyone has a certain amount of time to talk. So you're going to talk with people who you never would have talked to before, because if you were in person, you would have been naturally inclined to gravitate towards the people who you always talk to, etc.
Exactly
And
right.
this has been an entirely different experience for me. And I thought, well, when it went online, I thought, well, I'm glad that I can participate from my home, but I know that I know there's going to be some sort of sacrifice. But I thought it was going to be a sacrifice. It hasn't been a sacrifice at all. It's felt great. It's an excellent format. I think it's actually far more functional this way.
Yeah,
So,
I'm thinking of putting a big to someone if you're watching this, it's something called a large format Zoom meeting, a large attendee Zoom meeting, and we use breakout rooms and we use other back-end controls, so the meeting is super carefully managed, making sure that everybody that comes in is who they say they are, and use polls and it's
and just out. So that the listeners know, this is not for everyone. This is for very ambitious, heart-centered, entrepreneurial type men who are very responsible and accountable. This is not just if people are worried that they are going to be running into a bunch of low level unconscious types, there's a good filtering system to make sure that only high quality individuals are part of this group.
Absolutely.
Will, in addition to Metal Focus at Will, any other projects, any other things that you want to cover here that I haven't
while I'm asleep, you mean?
Talked about? While you're asleep? Oh yeah, you mean that you're doing what in your time beyond the 2 full-time CEO positions that you have?
8-hour days happen every day. Well, I'm one of the artists on Focus at Will. So I'm every day I do 2 or sometimes 3 hours. I get up really early to put more music into Focus at Will, and I've got a new project called Nature Beat, which will be one of the channels when we launch the artist channels next month. So that's a lot of fun. I still play, I still pick up a guitar and hammer stuff out. But I've become a lot less interested in music for entertainment and much more interested in music for purpose in the last couple of years. Having said that, if there's a great vocalist and I know the song, pass me the guitar, I'll make it happen,
Right. So how do our listeners follow your progress in your life?
My jaunts. I'm not much of a Twitter person. I very rarely do that. And I'm on Facebook. You can find me. I'm facebook.com/Henshall, HENSHALL.
You have an Instagram at Focus at Will?
Don't use Instagram. Oh, yeah, there's Focus at Will has an Instagram too, yeah. You can find Focus at Will, just look us up.
Yeah.
But, generally, for me, Facebook is where I kind of keep in touch with most people. But I don't really have time.
Right.
One of the things that during this crazy pandemic that a lot of people have lost the context of is that Facebook is like talking to someone in a bar or in a coffee shop. So if someone says something egregious or just stupid on Facebook, just imagine them with a beer in your hand.
Right.
And then just imagine them saying, in my opinion. Then you just like, in my opinion, the thing with the you're like, excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll see you later.
Especially during this time when there's so much reactivity going on too.
Don't take it so seriously.
Exactly. Well, Will Henshall, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Henshall, CEO, Focus at Will and Metal International. Such a pleasure always to chat with you, and looking forward to talking to you very soon.
Thanks very much, Sam. Good luck with everything, mate.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.